Okay. Computer stuff today. Let's see. Reddit.com. Okay. Oh. Dave Hollidart. Oh my god. Get ready to feel my wrath. Alright. Another great day being myself. Oh, new comments on Reddit. Let's take. Oh, my soul. Hey everyone, it's Dave. And today I'm going to talk about something that's a very valuable skill that you should learn if you have any aspiration of showing your work to the public. And no, it's got nothing to do with your stylus or software or paint set or pencils or paper or canvases, nothing like that. It's a soft skill. And it's probably the one that's going to end up saving you from going crazy or just altogether quitting. Today I'm going to talk about handling negative criticism and feedback. It's something that every artist is going to run into at some point. And I would be lying to you if I said I never ran into it. In fact, I run into it almost every single time I post anything, whether it's on Instagram or Reddit or Facebook or my website even. There's always somebody with something to say. And some people just aren't equipped with the ability to say something nice about anything. Tearing down someone else's work gives them a sense of satisfaction. Or perhaps they really just don't like it and don't have the skill set needed to explain what they don't like in a constructive or creative way. And the best way that they can deal with their feeling on it is to lash out so that they understand that you've heard that they're upset with your work. Sometimes people have a point. Sometimes they have a great reason to be upset with your work. They feel that it has objectified them in some way or marginalized someone, or perhaps you just were a little tone deaf in your visual language. Whatever the case may be, sometimes people have a very good reason to say what they have to say, even if the way they said it sucks. So today I'm going to talk about what it's like to accept that information, work with it, and how to build upon that so that way you're not defeated by taking a little bit of a hit, taking a little bit of a setback, or just having to accept the fact that somebody didn't like what they saw. And sometimes it's not always that easy of just dealing with it and moving on. The first thing I want to talk about is the mild, tepid, not really any kind of feedback. And sometimes it's in the form of, hey, love your work. Or other times it's, your work sucks. Ugh. Both of these responses are effectively the same thing to your growth. They've told you nothing. And while you can accept probably either one as either a positive or a negative response, that doesn't necessarily mean that you've gotten anything to grow on from there. So when someone says that they just like your work and they move on, tell them thank you. Great, awesome. We can be friends about this. Someone says that your work sucks and that's all they have to say about it, tell them thank you. And you can still be friends about it. Again, they're both the same answer, really. They just gave you a passing emotional language and moved on. This is really the best way to handle any of these, is just smile, thank them for the response, and move past it. Except no real answer has been given to you. There's no real information. There's nothing for you to build off of, work on. If you have the time, engage them. Ask them, well, what did you like the most? Or what did you not like about this? What did it make you feel? What could I have done better? And that, the last question, that can be asked for either one. If someone says they liked your work or they didn't like your work, you can still ask them, what could I have done better? What would have made you more happy with this piece? Learn to dig your own trenches on here. Fight the battles that you want to fight. And always, always, always pick your battles. Sometimes it's not worth it. If someone is visibly irate at your work, that may have nothing to do with your work. They might be upset about something else that happened that day, and your work just happened to be the easiest target. So it sometimes is better just to let things go. Read the room. So what happens when someone posts a response to your work and really gives you some strong language? And I'd like to share with you some of the things that people have said about my work, like this. I'll be honest with you, that language hurts. When someone has really taken the time to look at your work and give you an actual response to it, and it's got some pretty harsh language, how do you deal with that? How do you recover? Because clearly they took the time to think about what they were seeing, so they really did take the time to kind of deliver an impactful message to what it is that they saw. I want to tell you a few things that I do that might help you get over those stinging remarks. And the first thing I like to say is, one, do not get emotionally invested in your work or the responses you get from it. So what that means is your work and you are two separate entities. Once you've created the work and it's out in the open, it is no longer a part of you as a piece of work. It's its own thing. It's moved on. You're moving on. You will be growing and creating new art and adapting all of the things you've learned in the creation of that piece. But it is a snapshot of the person you were the second you released it, and then you're gone. You're moving on. You're moving forward. So no matter what, whether somebody liked it or didn't like it, you and that entity of work are no longer one and the same. It still is something you can be proud of or something you can learn from, but don't get emotionally invested in your work as it is contemporary with who you are now. You've grown. You've done more. You'll be doing more. So you don't have to necessarily accept that whatever criticism you got from that coloring book page you did from kindergarten as something that is reflected upon you now. And even work that you finished 5 minutes ago is the 5 minutes ago you at best, and probably reflects the person more towards the beginning of that work. So if it took you a week to do it, that was a week's worth of learning that you've done and no longer reflects the person you are at the end of it. You're going to grow and move on and go to your next piece. So don't get emotionally attached into those things. They really are no longer a part of you in that way anymore. They are part of who you were. So when someone makes a comment about that, the best thing that they're ever able to say is commenting on a past version of yourself, a person who hasn't yet grown from making that piece. And even a small amount of growth is not insignificant. So learn to separate what their language is as a past version of yourself. The same way if someone commented negatively on a refrigerator coloring page that you did when you were in kindergarten, it's the same as, the piece that you finished a week ago. It's no longer you. So learn to just say to yourself, that's okay for them to say that about the past me, because that person didn't know what they know now. They haven't experienced what I have now. And even if it was from the trip to the bathroom and back, and that's the amount of time, it still isn't the person who started that piece from a week ago, or a month ago, or even a day ago, because you've moved forward. So it's okay for someone to be harshly critical. And even if someone's like very positive about the work and say they loved it, they're going to love your next piece even more. Because again, you've grown from that, you've learned, and you've adapted the things that you've done from that piece. You have that experience behind you. It is no longer in front of you. So again, just don't get emotionally invested in your work in that way. And certainly don't get emotionally invested in the responses you get. Learn to kind of separate those two pieces. Feel pride, feel joy that you did it, but it is no longer umbilically attached to you. Second thing I like to say is learn to separate information from emotional language. This is so important because much like the first one of separating your emotional investment into the work you did before, understand that sometimes people speak purely emotionally. They look at something and it brings them great joy and they're like, it's wonderful, it's lovely, I can't stop thinking about this piece. What have they told you, really? There's no real information. They haven't described what qualities of the piece are good or what has brought them that joy. They just have spouted out their feelings, which is great. They should have those feelings. And if they're getting those feelings from your work, fantastic. But the same thing can be said if someone says your work sucks. I hate it. You should stop working. How about this one that's been said about me? Yeah. It's bitter. It's evil. It's an awful thing to say to somebody, but it doesn't tell me anything. It's just emotional language. It was weaponized words designed to make you feel bad about doing what you do because they can't feel joy about what they have. And that has nothing to do with you. So it's pretty easy to say, they've told me nothing. Literally nothing. I have no information. What can I grow from this? Nothing. You can't. It's impossible. And it was designed to hurt you. So therefore, it's not of any real value other than to them personally. And if it's of their own personal value, why would you put any emotional stock into that? And you should. Same thing as when someone says, oh, I just love it, brings me joy. Love it, great, thank you so much. Can you tell me more? At least with somebody being positive about that language, you can enjoy it with them. The negative pushes you away. So what happens when someone says something like this? There's two components to this statement that was made about my work. One is a very real thing to say. One is an actual critical piece of language, and the other is purely emotional gobbledygook. It doesn't mean anything. It's their taste, the flavor as it is to them, and the other is an actual breakdown of what they experienced and something that I can work with. So when someone says something like this, boy, does it sting when you first read it, because there is bones behind this meat. There's an actual structure. There's organization of thought. So it feels like it should hurt a whole lot more. But actually, this should feel a little better to you, because while they have the emotional language in there, which it sucks, it hurts, that emotional language can be completely removed from the sentence. And what you have is actual information. This person didn't like my work because of this. Now, it made them feel this way, or at least that's what they gave me to work with. But I don't have to feel that way about it. They did. And if this information that they gave me is true in any way, shape, or form, at least by their perception, okay. Maybe I look at my work objectively and try my best to see it the way they saw it. I'm probably never going to feel the emotional language they did, but again, I don't have to, and quite honestly, it may have nothing to do with my work. Again, I'll give someone the benefit of the doubt and say maybe they were just having a really hard time. Their significant other left them, their dog ran away, their cat doesn't like them anymore, they just lost $100 in a Ponzi scheme or something, who knows? Either way, I don't have to accept the emotional language, just the information that's there. And in that way, if I just subtract that information from the whole thing, then I have the best parts of something I can work with. And I suggest that when you get your comments and critiques on your work, you do the same too. The third thing is to remember that everyone is entitled to an opinion, even if it's absolute bullshit. If it sucks, if it's an awful opinion, they still can have it. And that's fine, because it's their opinion. And whether they're handing it to you or not does not mean that you have to accept it. You don't have to put it into your heart and into your mind and roll with it. If someone starts bringing out the pitchforks and torches, that doesn't mean you have to lower the gates. That drawbridge can stay fully up, and the moat can stay as full of alligators as you want. There's no reason that you have to let the angry village mob in. So just remember that everyone can have their opinion. Let them sit in their own misery. Same thing with the positive opinions. If someone loves your work, but you still feel like you could have done more, you don't have to stop because they said they loved it. You can keep going. You can do more. So if you can accept the one idea, then you can accept the other, right? Just keep growing and realize that someone's emotional attachment to your work, whether it's positive or negative, doesn't dictate when you start or stop. It just means they had a reaction. They're welcome to it, but it's not your reaction. The last thing that I like to bring up is this really kind of out there thought. And I know a lot of people probably don't share this idea. The common theme behind when someone gives you a harsh critique like this one from my work is to reject it. You don't have to take that from anybody. You're your own person. You can stand on your own 2 feet and you can just ignore the haters, right? I mean, you can, but is that any good to you? In my opinion, if someone has taken the time to say this, they've thought about your work, and whether they tried to weaponize an actual critique or not is kind of irrelevant to me, because again, I'm gonna let them have their opinion, and I'm gonna not take it personally because that's an old version of Dave, and I can just pick out the actual information from this, right? Data, things that I can work with. And what can I do? Well, what if I prove them right? My line work might be shaky for you, and it might be something you hate about my work, and maybe you don't ever want to see my work, but that's fine, because I'm not going to make this proof of what you said to be true. I'm not going to make it for you. I'm making it for me, because I took that information. You know what? You're right. Maybe my line work was just not right. And when I make my next one, I'm going to say, yeah, you can look at the old one. You're right. That line work was shaky. But guess what? On this next piece, I've improved my line work. You were right. You're just not right anymore. But again, whether that person that gave me that scathing review sees it or not is not my intent. And it's not even really my care. I didn't make this evidence for them. I made it for me, so I would get better. So I didn't have to read a review that says that anymore. I want to get on to the next comment that rips my work apart and gives me something to work with. And I want to sift through all that emotional language and find those nuggets of data and move and hold on to those and improve. I'm going to take all of those weapons that you've pointed at me and I'm going to turn them right back around. I'm going to make them into flowers, and they're going to look beautiful, and you're going to love them. And if you don't, more weapons, please, more flowers. So again, you're not limited by the language people choose to describe your work. You're not in a can waiting for them to open it up and then that's just what they get. You're a living, breathing, evolving thing. Your work will always move the way that you move it. And you're not stuck just because somebody thought of that past version of yourself did this thing that they don't like. That's all you have to do, really. And it takes practice. It takes a lot of work, and you have to be brave enough to understand that you have to sever that emotional investment of future you from past you. You have to be able to separate that information from the colorful language. You have to realize that they are entitled to that opinion because you put it out there to be discussed about. When it comes to the next piece, prove it right. Just don't do it for them. Do it for you. So anyway, friends, I hope that helps. I really do. It's how I've gotten through a lot of my pieces of work and how I've gotten through a lot of the criticisms. And trust me, they will never stop. If you put work out for the public opinion, you're going to get some people who love your work, some people who hate your work, and a whole lot of people that just don't say anything about it. So learn to separate those things out. Take the pure data, improve your work, and don't let it stop you. Don't let it stop you from growing, achieving, and improving the work that you do as long as you love it. And that's what it comes down to. All of this, all that I've said is just learning to be able to accept who you are, improve what you can do, and love your work without having to filter it through somebody else's lens. Love your work because you made it. And that was a beautiful moment in time that you created it. And that time you'll never get back because that was then. And don't forget to join me, twitch.tv/DaveHollandArt. I also have a free ebook in the comments below, and of course links to all of my social media, website, etc. So thanks so much for joining me. I hope you guys are having a great time. I love you. Take care. Bye-bye.